Go ahead, sir. We are live now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the participants for this series, Atmanirbhar Bharat, moving towards self-reliant India. Our Prime Minister's clarion call for vocal for local has provided an ideal opportunity to strengthen brand India. A vital part of this is skill development, experience sharing, which has been accepted as a critical requirement for effective employment as well as enhancing the productivity of job seekers in our country. We have and will continue to focus on youth and are mindful that being the youngest nation in the world, this provides us with a great opportunity to harness the potential and hone the skills of our youth, thereby achieving unprecedented success in the years to come. Through this initiative, we sincerely hope that a large number of students and entrepreneurs will get motivated and will upskill and reskill themselves to be of greater service for the society. It is against this backdrop that ASSOCHAM has initiated this series. It is our endeavor to get the finest minds who share their success stories and ideas that deliver superior performance for the benefit of the participants. Today's session is titled Making a Life versus Making a Living. Goes beyond the journey of just making a life or living. It is more holistic, and there is nobody better to talk about this than our guest speaker, Mr. Gurcharan Das, who actually needs no introduction. His name is synonymous with top-class ideation and results. He has a formidable reputation, and his achievements are indeed of the highest order. Mr. Das is world-renowned author, management guru, commentator, and advisor. He was CEO of Procter & Gamble India and later Managing Director, Procter & Gamble Worldwide Strategic Planning. Prior to P&G, he was Chairman and Managing Director, Richardson Hindustan Limited. Mr. Das graduated with honors from Harvard University and later attended Harvard Business School, where he is featured in 3 case studies. He is on a number of Indian and global boards, including the Global Advisory Board of Walmart, and is a regular speaker to the managements of the world's largest corporations. He has served on the juries of Templeton Prize, the McKinsey Award, and the Milton Friedman Prize. In 1995, after a 30-year career, he took early retirement. He is author of 2 international bestsellers, India Unbound, which is narrative account of India from independence to the global information age, and has been published in 17 languages and filmed by BBC. The difficulty of being good on the subtle art of drama is a riveting examination of moral failure, bad governance, and corruption in our modern world. His book, India Grows at Night, a liberal case for a strong state, was published in late 2012. He is also the author of a novel, A Fine Family, a book of essays, The Elephant Paradigm, and an anthology, 3 plays consisting of Larin Sahib, a prize-winning play about the British in India, which has been presented in the Edinburgh Festival. Meera, which was produced off Broadway to critical acclaim from New York critics, and Nine Jaku Hills, which has been performed in major Indian cities. He is also writer to a regular column in 5 Indian newspapers, including Times of India, and periodic guest column for Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Foreign Affairs, and New York Times. With all this said, such is his distinguished journey in corporate world, that the more you say, the less it is. It is very difficult for anyone to introduce a person of his credential in brief introductory remarks. I don't want to stand between you and Mr. Gurcharan Das anymore, and I would now request Mr. Das to deliver his address and wish this session my very best. Thank you very much once again for coming and joining us for this session. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Anil, for those kind words. Just a quick correction. My being on the global advisory board at Walmart was a long time ago. So I think next time I'll have to check your CV again, and just otherwise the rest of it sounds all right. Anyway, Anil called me a management guru, and let me correct that impression also, because in my book, a management guru is someone who's good at understanding, GU, but relatively useless, RU. So that's the guru that I am. But the problem is that the name guru is also in my name. And but it wasn't always so. Until the age of 3, my name was Ashok Kumar. But my grandmother suspected that my mother gave me that name because she thought my mother was secretly in love with a Bollywood actor named Ashok Kumar. So that wasn't an appropriate thing. So she takes me to her guru. I'm 3 years old. She takes me to a guru, puts me at his feet and says, Guruji enu na deo, give this boy a name. And the guru looks at me and he smiles and he says, well, since you have placed him there, let's call him Gurcharan Das. So overnight, at the age of 3, I am transformed from Ashok Kumar, the Prince of Happiness, to Gurcharan Das, the humble servant of the feet of the Guru. Now, I think the Guru also was sending me a message. And the message was, he was worried this boy needed to learn a little bit of humility. You know, it's all right to be a prince of happiness and all that, but you also need, and I think what he meant by that was not that I should not be ambitious. Humility doesn't mean you should not have ambition, but your ambition should be for your work, for your project, for your company, and not for your next promotion or for your next increment. And so it basic message that he was giving me was that take your work seriously, but not yourself seriously. So that lesson of his sort of defines this particular talk of mine. And in the context of Atmanirbhar, as well as capacity building, as Anil has explained to you, that capacity building can also be within us. It, to make ourselves self-reliant, to make ourselves resilient. That is what I'm going to talk about. Now, I'm going to tell you two stories today. And one, both deal with this business of making a life, but also they deal with the question of attitude. Um, I have met many leaders in the course of my life. In the first part of my life, I met business leaders, and in the second, which the first 25 years was business leaders. Then I quit the business world at 50, and I've met political leaders much more than business leaders. But I feel the successful ones, the great ones, had three characteristics in common. One, they had determination. See, you notice I haven't mentioned intelligence and I haven't mentioned credentials. Just they had sheer willpower, almost stubborn in what they felt was right. The second quality was what I just spoke about, was humility. And they were the kind of people who didn't care who got the credit, that they just had to do their job and they didn't care who got the credit. The third quality was integrity. And integrity is one quality that we can see and outside, but we shouldn't talk too much about it. Meaning that a person who talks too much about integrity, you've got to be suspicious. It's shown, as Americans say, in walking the talk, in action. Anyway, um, so and the second, so all three are examples of attitude that I'm going to speak about. And the most important decision we take as business people is to when we bring somebody inside our company. And it's surprising how little attention we give to recruiting people. Um, the when we interview someone, we're asking that person about knowledge, how much he or she knows. Well, look, you've got him here with his resume and all. Obviously, he knows. He may be top of the class at IIM. But still, he may be top of the class, but we are asking him about what he or she knows. What should you be asking? What you should be asking is how that person acts. What is his attitude? You have to uncover the inside of the person. And there are ways to do it, but we don't do it. And we've all, you realize then at the end of the day that what you've got is somebody who, may be intellectually a star, but he can't get along with other people, that he doesn't have this decisive quality. You notice I didn't mention intelligence at all. So what I'm trying to say here is that what I'm trying to say here is pay attention to attitude. Hire for attitude and train people for skills. It's easier, frankly. It's very difficult to change attitudes, but you can impart skills. Attitudes, come in very early in life. Some people say that it's how a mother holds a baby. That's how an attitude is formed, and that early in infancy. Anyway, so let's me talk about, I'll tell you now the two stories. And I'll begin, and basically I'm telling you a story about attitude, and I'm also telling you a story of how to make a life and not just make a living. So the best things in my long career in business were were taught to me by a person who started in our company as an assistant security guard in charge of the night shift in our office. He came from a village in Maharashtra, from Akola district, and he didn't know much English. And we used to laugh at the way he used to pronounce our company. His name was Kamble, and he used to call us Procter and Gamble. Anyway, but from day one, we could tell that we had got a dynamite person in the office because he, first of all, had a childlike curiosity. He loved to play with new gadgets. And so he found in the company the first day the coffee making machine. And so, very quickly, in between his rounds of security, he would be offering tea and coffee to the people. And they, of course, appreciated it in the evening when the office was closed. The next day, he discovered the telex machine. In those days, we used to send telexes. And this guy didn't know English. But within a week, he was sending simple telexes to people. Then the third thing he learned was uh, the EPBX, the machine to get people, switchboard. In those days, we put wires into the switchboard and to connect people. And so within a week, he was answering phone calls in his tutti frutti English. And then he learned the fax machine. Then he learned the projector. We were in advertising. We were a big advertiser. So our brand managers needed to see advertising commercials. And they had this luxury of seeing them after 6 o'clock, after Kamble came to work. So, you know, the thing about him was that he had this quality, such a positivism that flowed from him. And he was always laughing, joking. He had this childlike approach to life. You know what that is? That a child, when it's raining, all of us adults, we carry an umbrella, and then we go around. There's a puddle on the road. We go around the puddle. But a child jumps into the puddle right there. Well, Kamble was like that. He used to jump into the puddle. And so he had this curiosity that after 6 o'clock in the evening, if you needed anything, you said, ask Kamble. I remember one day I needed to get in touch with our finance director urgently. And he was not in Bombay. This was in Bombay. He was not in town. And so I didn't know where to get hold of him. But I asked Kamble. Quickly, he called his home. Then he found out that he was in Delhi. He found out he was at Ashoka Hotel. He found out what room he was. He connected me to him. Within 5 minutes, I was speaking to the finance director. Another day, a senior manager in the company lost his wallet. He dropped it outside the men's room. And Kamble, in his round, saw it, picked it up, and there was a lot of money in that wallet. And then, but he also checked the ID. There was an identification card, so he knew whose wallet it was. And he came to me and he said, "Look, I have to run to this address to deliver this money. Would I be, I was the head of the company, would I be the assistant security guard now for the next hour to make sure everything was okay?" And he was going to take a taxi and he was going to go to Bandra and he was going to deliver the wallet. And when he delivered that wallet, there was no one happier because that senior manager was buying a house and he and his wife were going to pay the advance for that house with that money that was in the wallet, and the seller was coming in the next few minutes. And so you can imagine the relief. Kamble gave the money but swore the man to secrecy. In fact, he swore me to secrecy. He says, "Don't please tell this story, it's just too embarrassing for me." And that was the kind of man he was. He didn't care who got the credit as long as the job was done. Anyway, so after 7, 8 months, our telephone operator had to go on maternity leave. She was having a baby. So Kamble went to the head of personnel and he said, "I'm tired of working at night. Would you uh, let me be your temporary telephone operator until she comes back from maternity leave, and then I'll go back to my job?" And the personnel guy said, "Kamble, are you crazy? We are a multinational company operating in 60 countries, and we get calls from all over. You don't know English, and how will you manage?" And so poor Kamble went away with a long face. But I heard through the grapevine this story of what had happened. So I went to the person. The guy had become such a legend in the evening that I said, "Look, give him a chance. You know, um, let him be. Let's try him out for a couple of days. Have a backup ready, and if he doesn't work out, we'll change." So Kamle was there next morning, pushing the buttons, pushing those wires into the switchboard, and having a great time. And that afternoon, I got a phone call from our head lawyer at Crawford Bailey. And he said, "Mr. Das, do you have a new EPBX system?" And I said, "No." Well, he said, um, whenever I called your office before, I used to have to wait for the fourth, fifth, sixth ring before it was answered. But now, this twice, 3 times I've called your office. Each time the call was answered on the first or the second ring. I said, "Well, I think we only Kamble is our new EPBX system." So afterwards, as in the evening, as I was leaving, I asked Kamble, I said, "Kamble, why do you answer the phone so quickly?" And he gave me an answer that demolished me. He said, "It might be a customer on the other side. And I don't want to you lose the order to a competitor. He may need the products urgently." I tell you, our finance director couldn't have given such a good answer. Anyway, this is the sort of person that Kamble was, that he had this positive quality, infected everybody, and everybody became, he enjoyed working and he made everybody enjoy working, having fun, serving coffee. And at lunchtime, he started carom board in our office. And so carom boards would come out, and soon they'd be having a carom tournament between the lunch hour. But I think what was really the qualities I'm talking about now: attitude, one, a sense of curiosity; second, a basic integrity. From that story about the wallet. Third, he had, uh, he had a basic sense of responsibility. Now, I'll just give you what I feel. I mean, he was hungry for work. He came from a village. He had a bias for action. That's a very good quality. He he had a basic sense of service. That if you needed something, you said ask Kamble, and he would do it, no matter who asked. And that service, I think, is very, very. There are only three ways to create competitive advantage in a company. Either you can have lower prices, or superior products, or better service. There is no fourth way. Now, to to bring your prices down, it goes down to the bottom line. It's very expensive. To have superior products, you have to invest a lot in R&D. But service is free. All you need is good attitude, like Kamble. And so I feel that this was a quality that 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 defined him. And uh, the other quality about him was a sense of ownership. One day at the switchboard, I was hearing him talking in Marathi to a housewife, she was telling him, her baby had got a cold, and he was telling her how to rub Vicks on the baby. He was doing a commercial on there. And so, but I guess the most important quality is the quality that the advice that Krishna gives to Arjuna on the battlefield at Kurukshetra, which is Nishkam Karma, you know. And that quality is the same one that I've been talking about, that he did his job without caring for who got the credit for it. And he wasn't concerned about getting his next promotion, etc. Anyway, I'm going to end the story by telling you that the man could not be stopped because he had such an infectious attitude that he rose to become a director of this company. Imagine, from an assistant security guard who didn't know much English. In between, he learned English, all those things, but he rose, a, which is a uh, which speaks well for him, but also speaks well for the company, which recognized his talents. So, what I think also Kamble is the fact that he enjoyed his work. I mean, he was able to make his work fun. And this is, of course, uh, brings me to the question of making a life. Most of us are too busy making a living. We are in a rat race, and when we are young in school, we are working hard to get good marks. And then when we start working, we are concerned about our next promotion. So we are too busy climbing ladders. And we forget the, in the difference. We are always planning ahead, and we forget that life is passing us by. And too many of us don't enjoy our work. That's why the restaurant chain is, thank God it's Fridays, is so successful. And so people talk about Blue Mondays, they talk about thank God it's Fridays. In my life, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story of my life now, the second story. In my life, my mother is the one who taught me that I should make a living. My father, who was actually an engineer, we were a middle class family, and he told me not to forget. He said, yes, your mother is right. You must make a living, but you must also make a life. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my father's advice and how it affected me. My earliest memory is of kindergarten. I was in Lahore. This was 1947. I was 4 years old, and I was coming home one day sporting a report card in my hand from kindergarten. And my mother says, did you stand first? And then my father at the back says to my mother, the wrong question, the wrong question. And so I looked at my father and he said, are you enjoying school? What are you enjoying in school? Are you enjoying playing? Are you enjoying counting numbers? What are you enjoying? So the process was set from age 4 in kindergarten, where my father was looking for something else and my mother was looking for something else for me. So, so I went to school, college, and no, before I went to college, I went through school. And then when I was 13, 14 years old, my father was transferred by the government to Washington because there was a water dispute with Pakistan. And my father was a canal engineer. And my government thought that I could help in the negotiation. My father could help in the negotiation. The World Bank was the mediator in Washington. And they were going to give a lot of money to both countries, India and Pakistan, to develop the waters of the Punjab rivers. But first, the two countries were fighting over which river was whose. So we were in Washington. And after this was one of the disputes that was settled peacefully across the table between Pakistan and India. And my family came home. I was in my final year in school. And so I said, I'll follow you when I finish my school. But instead of following them, I got a scholarship to go to Harvard. And my mother's advice was, now take useful subjects, make a career, make a career, become an engineer like your father, subjects that will max you. And my father says to me, you know, Harvard has many things. Learn everything. Don't just stay with one thing. Now, he was right because the undergraduate liberal education in an American college allows you to do everything. And so when I arrived at Harvard, I was 17 years old, and they told me you've come to the wrong school. I said, why? Because you said you ran to be an engineer. Go down, there's a river school down the river called MIT. You'll get a better education, engineering education. Anyway, I forgot my mother's advice and I plunged into a liberal education. And so I was studying Russian literature, Chinese ceramics, Greek tragedy, American politics, the world economy, everything except engineering. And I did even Sanskrit for 2 years. And when I told my mother, she practically had a heart attack. She said, this boy is going to end up useless. And so finally, I got a degree in philosophy. After, being jack of all trades, I got a degree. And then I got a scholarship to go to Oxford to do a PhD in philosophy. And I went home for the summer to be with my family. And after a month or so, I asked myself, do I want to spend the rest of my life at that stratosphere of abstract thought? No. My conscience said no. I wanted a life of action besides a life of thought. And so very sheepishly, I told my mother that I wasn't going to Oxford. And so she said, I knew it. I've landed up with an unemployed son at home. And so, partly to assuage her, she was upset and all. I started looking the newspaper, and suddenly in the Times of India, the next day, we saw an advertisement for a company that made Vicks Vapor Rub, and they wanted trainees, graduate trainees. So I applied and I got the job. And I thought it will be for a little while. But like the man who came to dinner, I stayed on. I liked the rough and tumble of the business life. And it was strange because after 4 years in ivy covered halls in Boston, Cambridge, here I was carrying a bag, going through the dusty bazaars of India, getting orders from chemists, So it was a very different life. But I also knew that I didn't want to cut off from the intellectual life. So from that, I made a decision that the weekends were mine. Luckily, our company worked only 5 days a week. So I decided to write. So I became a 5-day businessman and a 2-day writer, a weekend writer. I used to wear two different hats. And for the next 25 years, I wore two hats. I wrote plays. Anil has told you about them. I wrote a novel called A Fine Family. They all did well. Uh, these books are still available, and so on. And but my but one day, so after I was I started in the same company. It was bought by Procter and Gamble worldwide, and so I was CEO of Procter and Gamble, and then they sent me. Then I was head of Southeast Asia also. Then they sent me to world headquarters to manage strategy, global strategy. I was managing director, global strategy, and I was looking at the market shares of our brands. Brands like Tide and Ariel detergent, Pampers, Oil of Olay, Pantene shampoo, and Vicks, and all these. There were many, many products, Gillette blades, and so on. And so I looked out the window as I'm looking right now. And I read in the morning that the reforms were going on in India, and I was very excited. And also, I read that the left, the communists, and the left wing of the Congress party was trying to scuttle the reforms. There was a huge uh, debate going on, and I felt in that debate that the that the reforms might be lost because the government was not defending itself very well. Anyway, I said to myself that what am I doing looking at the market share of Pampers when I should be out back home in India doing something about all this? And so that's when I went home and told my wife that, let's pack up and go. And frankly, she was a good sport. I had to show her that this was what our savings were. Even if I didn't make any more money, that we would be able to pay our monthly bills, and from the savings that we had, and if we lived sensibly, we'd be all right. And so, but she did say that you're just 50. The retirement age is 65. And we had just begun to make a big money in this company. You have reached the top 10 and 15 years, my God. I said, we have made enough for in 2 years. So we don't need any more. Because the dollar goes quite far in India. So she agreed and I came back. And that's the story of having now for the last 25 years, I worn another hat. The weekend hat became a weekday hat. And I became a full-time writer. A full-time writer. And this is really, in a sense, I'm trying to explain to you that my father always wanted me to do my thing. You know, he did not, uh, he realized that I was now going to make a living, but he was very happy that I became a weekend writer. My point is, all of us want to do something that will give us happiness, that will fulfill our lives. And there are many of us who reach this point in our 40s who realize that when we say, is this what life was all about? And that's the same question I asked. I said, is this what life is all about? Looking at the market share of Pampers. And so I set out on a different path. When I went to college, my mother said, do engineering. I went on a different path. I was set to go for a PhD in philosophy. I became a salesman for Vicks Vapor Rub in the bazaar, a different path. So these different paths really are a way. In a way, life just happens. We forget. We plan. Young MBA says today, I met somebody the other day. He says, in 10 years, I'll be here. In 15 years, I'll be here. In 20 years, I'll be here. Well, in my case, I was always on the fly and life was happening. But the important thing was to find satisfaction, to, and so it's really the duty, our duty as parents, to do what my father was doing, to guiding me to see what gave me pleasure, what gave me happiness, what I felt passionate about, you know, and I was sort of lucky. Now I think that's the point that our teachers, we as parents, we need to give that um, guidance to our children. The one thing that when you are when you are absorbed in your work, and I come back to Kamble, because Kamble gave everything to that moment when he was absorbed in his work. And when you're absorbed, time gets distorted. Meaning, you say, oh my God, it's already 3:45. I thought it was 3 o'clock. So 45 minutes I've lost. And so, because you're absorbed in something, that's the that's the critical thing, that you should feel absorbed. And the other lesson I would say from Kamble is that Kamble was doing things what the guru was telling me and my grandmother, which was to take myself lightly, to take my work seriously, but myself not seriously. You know? So there's a word in Sanskrit called lakhima. Lakhima, in fact, it's used also by Patanjali as one of the siddhis. And Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras says that it's a lightness, a lightness. So what I suggest to you is to live lightly. Light, not like a feather, but like a bird, and fly. Fly the way Kamble used to fly. Don't carry the burden of life with you. You know, one of the nice things about our gods, our ancient gods, is the notion of Leela. You know, Ram Leela, Krishna Leela. Well, while they're creating the universe, Shiva, while he's dancing, is having fun. He's dancing. The Krishna, while he's creating the world, he's playing the flute, he's dancing with the gopis. So let's be like those gods. And divine play is Leela. And so every day should be Diwali. And so particularly this is my thought for you in this post-COVID life that you're going to embark on. Live lightly. Lightly, not like a feather, but like a bird. Like the gods who are laughing and playing practical jokes on each other. And with this thought, I will say namaste and thank you for attending this talk. And if you have any questions, I shall be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. This has been a wonderful and most interesting session that I have attended in a very long, long time. I just want to ask you a question. What do you see in today's younger generation and the generation of your time? What is the kind of difference in their work-life balance that you see today?
Well, the big differences are the following. One, we were fewer people when I was younger. There was less competition. Today, fierce competition to get into a good college. And my God, the kind of marks you need to get into a good college. The second was that there were very few jobs at my time. When my mother thought of a job, she thought of the government. You get a job with the government. Now, after 91, we got Anil, we got our freedom not in 1947. We got our economic independence, our economic freedom only after 1991. After 1991, before 91, the middle class was only 8%. Now it's 33%. A lot of middle class jobs are available. Before the middle class, you had to be working for the government to be in the middle class. So I would say there's opportunity now. There's opportunity. There is a lot more, lot of mental freedom that we didn't have. The mental freedom, people are quite content in talking English. They don't need to speak in the Queen's English. They're very easy mixing up words. Youngster who throws the newspaper into my house said the other day, "Sahab, tension mat lijiye, bill main kal le aunga." Now, how many words of English? How many words of Hindi? There are Z television a few years ago. Z headline news. आज Middle East में peace हो गई. Now, how many words of English? How many words of Hindi? This is at the prime time news. Now, that's the freedom that people have. Mental freedom, a lot. I wrote that book, India Unbound. India Unbound was the freeing of India from the shackles of the past, of the various social sort of rigidities, and I was lucky that my father was way ahead of his time. Otherwise, my mother was caught. Get a job, boom, that's it. So that's my answer.
I have a question in the chat box saying how to build healthy relationship with people showing attitude or getting credit for themselves.
Well, To be very honest, all human beings are self-interested. They want to get ahead in life. And so they naturally want to take credit. What is that? So self-interest is all right, to be self-interested. If it's raining, Anil, you carry an umbrella. Nothing wrong, nothing selfish about that. But selfishness is about wanting to push somebody out to get what you want. Stab somebody in the back. To worry, oh, why did he get an increment and such a lot and I didn't get so much? That's the problem. And that is the part that is where I learned from Kamble that, life is not about that alone. That as long as you can do reasonably well, you get recognized, you should. It's a good aspiration, at least, to try and diminish the ego a little bit. Don't give elevator speeches to your bosses all the time, how good you are in 1 minute while you catch him in the hallway or on the lift.
Thank you very much. I think this session has been so nice, and there are no more questions from the audience. So I want to actually just wrap up to say that how beautifully you that whether you are a politician or you are a businessman, the leadership quality is in having determination, having humility, and having integrity. And various facets of integrity were brought out by you in your communication, in your sharing of stories. Hats off to you. And all those young people who have joined today would take a very big takeaway that when you are hiring somebody, you are hiring for next 30-40 years for your organization, for your output. And it is so important to see a fundamental issue whether the guy has got the right attitude or not. He need not have a very important degree and whether he can talk in English or Hindi. That's not important because everything he can learn as he progresses in his journey, in his career. I think very beautifully shared with us, and I like to thank you. Last but not the least, the karma theory at the end, is what the philosophy that we all imbibe, we all learn, and it is true at every place in our life, and every Indian should go back to this. That if you believe in karma theory, ultimately the world is yours. Live life like a bird. With these words, I'd like to thank you. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your beautiful thoughts with us. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.